First YouTube video. Let's try this again. What's up, nerds? Today I'm going to be talking about the movies that I saw this week, because I watch a lot of movies every week. Probably too many movies, but point is, I watch a lot of movies. So today, I'm going to be talking about the movies that I saw this week. First off, I'm going to talk about short films. This week I saw 5 short films. And of those 5, my favorite short film that I saw this week was History of the Entire World, I guess. My least favorite was Audible. So, to start things off, my favorite short film. History of the Entire World, I guess.
How did this happen? A long time ago, actually never, and also now, nothing is nowhere. When? Never. Makes sense, right?
Released in 2017, this is a YouTube video, but it's on Letterboxd. It's counted as a short film. Letterboxd has this weird thing where it counts some YouTube videos as short films, but not others, and it's not really consistent what it counts as a short film. But that's Letterboxd's problem, not mine. My whole thing was just it's on Letterboxd, which I'm glad about because I love this short film. I saw it back in 2017 when it first came out, and I loved it. I still love it. I'm a huge history nerd, and so just this whole thing trying to condense all of human history down to 20 minutes, and it succeeds. Like, it's genuinely informative to the extent that it tries to be, and more than that, it's hilarious.
Hi, everything's great, said some guy who seems to be getting very popular and is then arrested and killed for being too popular, which only makes him more popular. You can make a religion out of this.
It packs human history with this internet age ironic humor that works so well with the style of animation and music that the video has, and it works incredibly well. It's brilliant, it's hilarious, absolutely hilarious. One of the funniest videos on YouTube, and I love it. And everyone's seen it. Like, you can find so many memes that were made about it because it's just so easy to pick little clips of it out and make memes of it.
It's sad. I'm sad. I miss you. Oh, why? The sun is a deadly laser. Loving Jesus legal, yeah. Bullshit. This whole thing is bullshit. That's a scam. Fuck the church. Here's 95 reasons why. Let's overthrow the palace and cut all their heads off, said Robespierre, cutting everybody's head off until someone eventually got mad and cut his head off. You could make a religion. No, don't.
It is a genuinely hilarious short film, and I love it. It's probably my favorite YouTube video, and since it's on Letterboxd as a short film, probably one of my favorite short films of all time.
By the way, where the hell are we?
My least favorite short film, Audible. It's not bad. It's actually a really good short film. It's a really insightful documentary that does a great job of what it wants to be. It's a documentary short about a deaf high school football team playing their last game of the year. And in that regard, it's great. It gives a great insight into the daily lives of these players, the struggles they're going through, their worries about the future, everything. The problem is that there's so much everything that it doesn't have enough time for a short documentary to really cover all of it. This would be a lot for even a feature-length documentary, but for a short film, there's just too much. It's great. It's really insightful. but there's so much that it would have worked better as a documentary series rather than as a documentary short. In fact, to an extent, it probably would have actually worked really well as a narrative television show because there's so much of it that's shot so cinematically that one could think it was shot as a drama. Like there's this one shot of one of the players, Amari, he's like screaming right before the game, and it's this fantastic shot of him. Or the shot of the football players running out into the field. Or this one edit where it has the football players dancing on the field celebrating their victory, and it intercuts that with them dancing at the homecoming dance. And it's such a good edit that it works. It would have worked well in a TV show. And so to an extent, this documentary short would have been so much better as a docuseries or as a television series, not as a documentary short. That's why I picked it as my least favorite. Because it's great, but it doesn't work as a short. It would have worked so much better with more time. It's only 40 minutes. In reality, it needs like 4 hours at least. But it's still a great documentary. And now, feature presentations. This week, I watched 10 feature films. And of those 10, my favorite was Memories of Murder. My least favorite, Killing of a Chinese Bookie. So, Memories of Murder. This is the third Bong Joon-ho movie that I've seen. It was released in 2003, and it's inspired by South Korea's first serial killer. His name was Lee Chun-jae, but at the time this movie was made, it was still unsolved. It was still an unsolved series of murders. He himself was in prison, but he was in prison for an unrelated crime at the time. It wasn't until years after this movie was made that he confessed to being the Hwaseong serial killer as well. He was not a good guy. He was active from 1986 to 1991. In that time, he killed 15 women and girls, including his own sister-in-law, who was the reason why he was sent to prison. And he did very not good things. Not a good guy. He's currently serving a life sentence, thankfully. But at the time this movie was made, it was still unknown who committed all of those murders. No one knew that it was Lee at the time. He hadn't yet confessed. And so, in a way, this is a movie that tries to examine the failures of the police during that time. It's a movie about 3 detectives who are dealing with the case. Those 3 detectives are Park Do-man, played by Song Kang-ho,
너 죽은 박보이랑 사귀다가 작년 8월에 체했지.
who was in Parasite, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Seo Tae-yoon, who is played by Kim Sang-kyung,
사람을 그렇게 못 알아봐서 어떻게?
and Cho Young-koo, who is played by Kim Roy-ha.
아유, 인상이 더럽네 이놈. 아유, 이놈 이거 얼굴만 봐도 막 화가 나네요 이놈 이게.
And now, these 3 detectives are the main ones heading the investigation into trying to solve these murders. And that is the simple explanation of the movie. It's a police procedural. But this is a Bong Joon-ho movie. And something one should never do when watching a Bong Joon-ho movie is go in with expectations. Especially not if those expectations are that it's going to follow traditional narrative or genre conventions. It won't. Bong Joon-ho movies never do. And I say that I've only watched 3 of his movies, but all 3 have that same idea of there's this simple premise, and then it goes beyond that, and it uses that simple premise to explore something more. In the case of Memories of Murder, what it does is kind of hold a mirror to South Korean society, specifically police in South Korea. More broadly, though, in a way, it can be used to look at police in general, especially if one takes a look at recent problems America has been having with police. This is a very timely movie, one that manages to, years and years later, show a lot of the problems that are inherent with police. For example, this movie deals with a lot of different topics, but the main thing that this movie deals with is masculinity. All 3 of the main detectives are men. There is one other female officer who's assigned to the case, but she's not treated with the same amount of respect as the 3 treat each other. And the whole issue with the case is how these 3 detectives hamper themselves because of their rampant, unchecked, insecure masculinity.
빠지냐? 어? 여기 강간의 왕국이야? 그러니까 이 시장님 새끼. 이리 와, 이 새끼야. 야, 야, 자기, 야, 너 뭐야? 야, 자기, 야, 너 뭐야? 나와, 이 새끼야. 아저씨! 야, 씨발새! 아니, 피해자가 같이 가야 된다니까!
The best example of this is Cho Young-koo, who is extremely hot-headed, extremely violent and volatile. He's known to just drop kick people at a dime. There's one scene where he leaps across a table and just kicks a guy in his seat, knocking him over. And that's consistent throughout the entire film. That is his go-to move, is to just drop kick people, to beat people, to get confessions out of them, even if they're innocent. Park Doo-man is much the same way. He himself doesn't as often resort to the violence, but he condones Cho Young-koo's. He uses Cho Young-koo as kind of like a dog on a leash, letting him off when it's time to get something he wants. And so that's what this movie is, how their rampant and toxic masculinity causes them to look in all the wrong places, causes them to push people away, and causes this distrust, disconnect between the police and the people they're supposed to be serving. Even Seo Tae-yoon, who's supposed to be the more straight-laced, more reserved of the 3, ends up succumbing to that masculinity at the end, when an aspect of his own masculinity is threatened. Specifically, throughout the course of the movie, he's shown to be bonding with this little girl and acting as like a father figure to her.
술집 바꿔준대. 너 아까 아저씨가 얘기한 거 그거 한번 잘 생각해봐. 응? 네. 자, 범인이 그 변소 밑에 숨었다가 밤중에 나온다는 그 얘기 제일 먼저 그 얘기를 한 사람이 누구라든가.
그걸 어떻게 알아요? 참사 시리즈 제일 먼저 만든 게 누구냐?
And at the end, when she's killed, that's an aspect of his masculinity that's threatened. The fact that he cannot protect someone he loves, that's an aspect that's supposed to be connected to fatherhood and masculinity, and he fails. It's taken away from him. And so in that moment, to reassert control, he loses control and beats the prisoner they have.
일어나, 이 새끼야!
And so we see how that violence, that constant violence, doesn't help. It doesn't lead them to the right people. It leads them to all the wrong people. And we also see how everything that they do revolves around that masculinity, especially Park Doo-man. All of the ideas he has about how to solve the case, all of the theories he has, they all revolve around some aspect of masculinity. For example, there's this scene where he has another male officer dressed as a woman to lure the killer out, using trying to demasculate another officer to lure the killer out. He's constantly trying to demasculinize the people around him. He demasculinizes this one officer. When they later realize that the killer didn't leave any hair at the scene, he's the one who proposes the theory that the killer has no hair in his genitals. And so he's the one who proposes the idea of inspecting the genitals of prisoners and other people to see who doesn't have hair, to see who it could be. And it leads him to a shower house where he starts watching people walk by, watching the men walk in, and checking their genitals to see who he can demasculinize, to see which of them doesn't fit his idea of masculinity, so he can pinpoint the killing on them. All the evidence relates to aspects like that. The reason why one of the prisoners is let go is because his hands are too rough, and it's discovered the killer's hands are soft. An aspect of masculinity that's being put at the center of this investigation. Rough versus soft hands. Hair versus no hair. The DNA that's being used to discover the killer comes from semen. It's all about masculinity for these detectives. That's how they're trying to solve the case. That's all they know. Their entire worlds revolve around that concept. Whenever it's challenged, that's when they lash out the most, as we see with Seo Tae-yoon at the end. But of course, this is a Bong Joon-ho movie, and so to say it's all about masculinity would be to simplify it too much. This is a movie that goes beyond that as well, as Bong Joon-ho movies tend to do. This is a movie about class. We see that in the conflict between the three detectives, especially between Seo Tae-yoon and Park Do-man. Park Do-man, who's more reliant on his intuition and what he's seen, versus Seo Tae-yoon, who's more reliant on his education and more by-the-book investigation methods. Park Do-man considers him to be elitist for this reason. Seo Tae-yoon considers Park Do-man to be uneducated for this reason. That conflict of class. Seo Tae-yoon, who comes from the city, Park Do-man, who's from this rural area. More broadly speaking, this even applies to conflict of class between nations. We see this with the fact that these South Korean investigators are reliant upon American technology to solve the case. They don't have the technology they need to analyze the DNA. And so it becomes this conflict broader of class between nations. This is a film about corruption. We see that in the moments where the police is at its most authoritarian and corrupt, they're also at their most inefficient. At the end, when the little girl who is close to Seo Tae-yoon is killed, the city is on a lockdown during a drill. And during that drill, the three detectives and the sergeant are fighting each other in the office. And it's while they're fighting each other, and the city is on lockdown, that the most personal and emotional killing occurs. Almost like a mockery of the power, almost like the killer is using their inefficiency against them in a moment where they're supposed to be at their most powerful. That's when they lose the power the most. We see that with the sergeant trying to frame innocent people for the killing, saying that he doesn't care about the evidence Seo Tae-yoon's found. He thinks he's got his guy, and that's all he cares about. And so we see how that corruption nearly leads to an innocent man being imprisoned just because they don't feel like looking any further.
야, 왜 이러는 겨? 다 된 밥이 왜 똥물을 끼얹는겨? 아, 아까부터 계속 그 말씀 드렸잖아요. 백광호 제 범인 아니라니까. 야, 조용히 뭐다.
아니, 반장님. 죽은 여자 목에 끈 같은 걸로 3번이나 꽁꽁 묶어서 매듭을 만들어 놨잖아요. 제 백광호 손 한번 봐봐요. 저 손으로 뭘 묶는다는 게 가능합니까?
나가.
So this is a movie that is layered with all these themes that Bong Joon-ho frequently tends to explore in his movies. His movies tend to have these social themes, and they're explored brilliantly here. And it's not just in the thematic significance of the film. The making of the film, it's just a very well-made movie. The cinematography is beautiful. The editing is fantastic. The performers are all phenomenal, especially the three lead detectives. Song Kang-ho, I've seen him before in Parasite. That was the first Korean movie I ever saw, and that was the first movie of his I saw. And he was phenomenal, and he's phenomenal here. Kim Sang-kyun and Kim Roy-ha are both also incredibly phenomenal. The music is gorgeously haunting. It's one of my favorite soundtracks of its year, and it's one of my favorite soundtracks of the 2000s. It's a phenomenal soundtrack that beautifully captures this haunting feeling the serial killer leaves on the city. It's absolutely gorgeous. And so, overall, this is a movie that's rich with thematic significance, powerfully written, fantastically performed, and just incredibly well made. Not my favorite Bong Joon-ho movie, that's still Parasite, but if I were to rank the three Bong Joon-ho movies I saw, I would go Parasite, Memories of Murder, and Okja. And all three are phenomenal. All three are worth watching. But this one especially was the best movie I saw this week. The worst movie I saw this week, Killing of a Chinese Bookie.
Late?
Right on time.
And, God, where do I even begin with this movie? Alright, Killing of a Chinese Bookie is a 1976 John Cassavetes movie about this strip club owner, Cosmo Vitelli, who is played by Ben Gazzara. Who owes a lot of money to the mob. And so they offer him this deal. Kill this Chinese bookie for us, we'll cancel your debt. And he does. And that could be interesting. It's not the most imaginative or unique or creative premise, but it's good. It could be good. But it never is. Like, it never manages to be any good. It's just so boring. There's supposedly a director's cut that cuts off half an hour of it. But the problem isn't even that it's too long. It's that it doesn't use its time nearly well enough. It's not about what the movie needs to take away, it's about what the movie needs to add. The problem is, none of the characters have any reason to exist within the story. None of them have any kind of arc, or proper motive, or anything tangible to hold on to. They are dull. They don't change. None of the characters have an arc. Cosmo Vitelli is the exact same person at the end of the movie that he is at the beginning. Like, if there are changes, it's a superficial one where he, like, openly declares he loves Rachel to the strip club.
She was a black girl, black and beautiful. And I loved her. And I drink to her.
But, like, there's no scene at the beginning that shows him unwilling to do that. So it's not like it's a progression of him opening up to his feelings. There's no moments where he's unwilling to. So him being willing to at the end isn't a triumphant moment. It's not a moment of change for him. It simply exists, and that's the case with everything he does. There's no moment where he's unwilling to kill. There's no moment where he's unwilling to steal. There's no moment where he's unwilling to do anything that he does in the movie, or that he changes when he does these things. One would think that the killing of the Chinese bookie, which is so central to the movie that it's the name of the movie, would have some impact on him, but it doesn't. Even when he talks to the bookie, and the bookie pleads for his life, and he doesn't even plead. It's like this one single quiet line of him saying he's a bad person, he's sorry.
I'm real bad. Real bad. I'm sorry.
It has no impact on him. And if it has no impact on him, how can it possibly have any impact on us? there's no reason to care about it. There's no reason to care about him or anything he does or anything he goes through because he's got nothing. John Cassavetes has this style. I haven't watched a lot of his movies, but from what I understand, he has this style of wanting to be real to human speech and real to human action. And so he doesn't have this focus on genre conventions and genre flares. This is a neo-noir movie, but it doesn't feel like one. It feels like a melodrama, and a very dull one at that. And that intense focus on realism only makes it more boring because without reason to care about these characters, we don't care about their conversations. Yeah, the conversations feel real, they overlap, they contradict, they cut off. Sure, but there's no reason to care about these conversations if the people don't feel well-rounded. They feel real, I suppose, in that they're awkward and they don't have any charisma. Sure, I'm one to talk about that, but the point is, I'm not being made into a 2-hour movie. This is. And for 2 hours, I have no reason to care about these people. They don't use the time they have to any good length. So, to know that there's a director's cut where half an hour is cut, great. You can cut out some stuff that you don't need. Mr. Sophistication is apparently almost not in the movie in the director's cut. Wonderful. He's an annoying character and I hated him.
Sweet love, I can give you anything but love.
But the problem with the movie isn't what it needs to be cut. The problem is what it needs to add. And so a director's cut that takes out half an hour doesn't change the fact that it still needs more to care about it. And to be fair to the movie, there are some good aspects. Cinematography is pretty good and the editing's alright. And Ben Gazzara does a pretty solid job in the lead role. But it's hard to care about how good Gazzara does in the role if the character itself isn't worth caring about. Why would I care about Gazzara's performance if the character is not written in any way that I should care about the character? It's a shame. It's almost a waste of Gazzara. But that's what it is. It's a waste of his talent.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at me, right? I'm only happy when I'm angry, when I'm sad, when I can play the fool.
It's just not a good movie. It's dull.
Game a while, you're sure to find happiness, great success, all the things you always whined for.
So, the range for this week: Memories of Murder, 4.5 out of 5. Killing of a Chinese Bookie, 1 out of 5. Those were the best and worst movies I saw this week. Anyways, that was the video for today. What do you think, Peppo? This is my ferret. He and I disagree on movies a lot. What was your favorite movie of the week this week, Peppo? Juan de los Muertos. Okay, fair enough. Peppo likes zombie movies. I can respect that. Alright? See you guys next time. Say goodbye, Peppo. Bye bye.